Stop explaining yourself. Not to your boss, not to your family, not to the person who questioned your decision, doubted your direction, or made you feel like your choices needed a defense. Every time you explain yourself to someone who didn't ask, you hand them something they never earned. You give them access to your reasoning, your uncertainty, your need to be understood. And the moment they have it, the dynamic shifts in a direction that almost never works in your favor. Machiavelli identified this pattern across every court, every council, every negotiation he ever documented. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why explanation costs you power, and what to do instead that changes everything about how people treat you. Now, let's start with why you over-explain in the first place, because the reason is not what most people think. Here is the uncomfortable truth underneath most over-explaining. You are not clarifying. You are not being transparent. You are seeking approval from someone whose approval you have already decided matters, often someone who has no actual authority over the decision you have already made. Think about the last time you over-explained something. A choice you made about your career, a relationship you ended or started, a direction you took that someone in your life questioned. You already knew what you were doing. You had already decided. And then you spent 10 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe an entire conversation, explaining why your decision was reasonable, logical, justified. Who are you explaining it for? Not for clarity, for permission. For the nod that tells you the person across from you accepts what you have done, and by extension, accepts you. Machiavelli watched princes destroy their authority doing exactly this. The moment a leader began explaining his decisions to the people affected by them, the dynamic inverted. He was no longer the decision maker, he was the defendant. And a defendant, regardless of how good their case is, has already conceded something by standing in that position. The person who decides and moves does not explain the decision. The decision is the communication. Everything after it is negotiation with someone you have already allowed into a room they should never have entered. Over-explaining is not honesty. It is the performance of a need for validation, dressed as transparency. And once you see it that way, you will feel it every single time it happens, in yourself and in everyone around you. The second thing explanation does is even more expensive. Because it doesn't just cost you authority in the moment, it permanently changes how people calculate your future decisions. This is the mechanism most people never consciously examine. When you explain your reasoning, even once, even reasonably, even in a way that lands well, you have established a precedent. You have taught the person across from you that your decisions come with access to the process behind them. And once that precedent exists, its absence becomes conspicuous. The next time you make a decision without explaining it, they notice, they ask, they push. Not because they are aggressive, because you taught them that explanation is available, and silence means something is being withheld. You have, without intending to, created an expectation of access to your interior that you now have to maintain or defend against. Machiavelli was precise about this. He wrote that the prince who consults widely invites challenge widely. The consultation is not just information gathering. It is a signal about who has standing to weigh in. Extend that standing once, and it becomes an assumed right. The same principle applies to explanation. Every time you justify a decision, you are telling the person you are justifying it to that their opinion of your decision has weight, that you are accountable to their understanding of your reasoning, that if they find the reasoning insufficient, they have grounds to push back. You built that structure. You handed them the blueprint. The way out is not to become defensive or withholding. It is to simply stop building the structure in the first place. Decide, act, allow the outcome to be the communication. People cannot challenge a process they were never given access to. Here's the third thing, and this is the one that shifts something at a deeper level, because it is not about authority or strategy. It is about what explaining costs you internally. Every time you explain a decision you have already made, you reopen it. You go back inside the reasoning. You revisit the considerations. You weigh it again against the objections the person in front of you is raising or might raise. And in doing that, even if nothing changes, even if you end the conversation certain you were right, you have spent energy relitigating something that was already settled. Multiply that across every decision you have explained in the past month. How much of your mental and emotional energy has gone into defending choices you had already made, instead of moving forward from them. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that the man who cannot govern his mind will be governed by others. Not through force, through the constant invitation to re-examine, re-justify, and redecide what should have been final. The person who stops explaining does not just appear more confident to the outside world. They become more confident internally, because they stop living in the gap between what they decided and whether other people accept it. That gap, you see, is where a significant portion of most people's psychological energy just disappears. Closing it isn't arrogance. It's not indifference to other people's perspectives. No, it's the recognition that a decision made with integrity doesn't require a jury. Act, move, let the outcome speak. Your reasoning is yours, and it doesn't owe itself to anyone who didn't participate in making it. This isn't about becoming cold, dismissive, or closed. It's about replacing explanation with something that costs you nothing and builds the perception that explanation was costing you everything. The replacement is simple. When challenged on a decision, acknowledge, don't defend. Not, here's why I did this, and here's the logic, and here's why your concern is addressed. Just, I understand that's how it looks to you. Or, I hear that. Or simply, silence, followed by moving forward. Acknowledgement without justification communicates something explanation never can. It signals that you've heard the challenge, processed it, and found it insufficient to change your course, without ever saying any of those words. The person who explains is asking for acceptance. The person who acknowledges and moves is demonstrating that acceptance was never the condition for action. Machiavelli, he called this the posture of the decided man. Not aggressive, not dismissive, just finished with the question. Already past the place the other person is still standing in. That posture, more than any single decision you could make, is what changes how people relate to you over time. Because people don't ultimately respect the person whose reasoning they understand. They respect the person whose direction they cannot redirect. 4 things. One shift underneath all of them. You explain because you are seeking permission. You train people to challenge you. Every time you do, you keep yourself inside decisions that should already be behind you. And the alternative, acknowledgement without justification, costs you nothing and builds the thing explanation was designed to earn, but never could. Machiavelli never wrote a chapter on this directly. He didn't need to. Every page of his work is a demonstration of it. He documented power without apologizing for the documentation. He drew conclusions without defending the method. He wrote the thing that needed to be written and allowed 5 centuries of reaction to be the proof. He did not explain himself, and you are still here, reading what he left behind. Think about the last explanation you gave, that you didn't need to give. The decision was already made, the direction was already set. And you explained it anyway, not for clarity, but for the feeling that someone understood and accepted what you had done. Did it give you that feeling? Or did it leave you slightly more uncertain than before you started, because the act of explaining had reopened something you'd already closed? That is the cost. Not dramatic, not visible. Just a quiet, consistent drain on the certainty that good decisions deserve to keep. From today, decide. Move. Let the outcome be the communication. You don't owe your reasoning to anyone who is not part of making it. One question. Every one characteristic. Think of the last decision you over-explained. The one where you knew before you started that you didn't need to justify it, but you did anyway. What were you actually looking for from that person? Sit with it. Drop. Decided. In the comments, if this changed something about how you will move forward, I will be reading.